So chapter 34. Chapter 34 now is kind of round out all the stuff that we've been speaking about with joy. It rounds it out and also starts us off for what the next section is going to be. Section-wise, we start off with chapter 26. We're talking about all the things fighting sadness. So chapter 26 is things in the physical world that could cause us sadness, debilitating sadness. And then we went on to different things of feeling sad within ourselves, our own state that we're in, even moving on to apathy, till we got to the point of the Ahavas Yisrael chapter, and then last chapter already, we're rediscovering joy in all this. Where do we actually find joy? Now that we've battled the sadness, where do we find joy? So chapter 34 starts, we know that the Avos were a Merkava. So the Avos, they were great men, very smart people, influential people, well-respected people, powerful people, very rich people, wealthy, etc. They dealt with kings and big chieftains. So they weren't just anybody on the block, and they gave themselves totally over to God. That's why I call them the chariot. Where you lead, I'll follow. There's no will of its own, even though I'm this great, mighty, powerful person. And yes, all those brachos did come from Hashem, of course, but they recognize it, and they gave themselves totally over to his will. Not only that, you go through that, you get to Moshe Rabeinu. It says the Shechinah spoke from Moshe's throat. Moshe was the conduit for that. And then you have the prophets that came and all the great people that came after that. They have different levels of chariotness. We can acknowledge, I don't know that I could quite reach that level. We're not exactly on par with that. And not just that, we did have a slight moment where we did sort of experience that chariotness, that moment of totally giving over, the submission to godliness. And that was at Har Sinai, at the giving of the Torah. The Jewish people, we want to hear from God. And okay, he says the first Dibra, it says the first commandment, and everybody passed out. They expired. They have to revive them. Say the next one. Expired. And they're like, okay, we're done with this. Moshe gave over the rest of the Torah, etc. But Moshe goes up to Har Sinai and he comes back down. And what's the first mitzvah now? The first mitzvah now is to build the Mishkan, to make a home for God in this world. What do you mean making a home for God? Okay, the Mishkan. We can see God, the revelation. So the point when we say, we're going to make a home for God is to say, hey, here's a place where you could be the real you. Let the real you shine through. This would be the place where God will be revealed. We're going to have a place now will be evident, where God will dwell. This whole thing about, we have to make a deer for Hashem, we have to make a home for God in the lower realms, and it's not just, this is a nice description that we can understand, but the whole thing of making a home for God is your home is where you can be your real self. That's where your real self gets revealed. You're comfortable to be yourself. You make the rules. You have to worry about all the social norms or sometimes being on your best behavior sort of thing. You can just be you at home. That's why you like to be home, because you can be comfortable. So when we say that we want to make a home for God, we want to make it a place, we want this world to be a place where God can be quote unquote comfortable being his real self. And that's why Torah mitzvahs reveal God. We're like, hey, look, I've just made a spot for you. Be your real self here. That's what we're aiming for. So because we couldn't handle the level of revelation that occurred, which connects to the fact that we couldn't necessarily handle being at all time the chariot for God, we couldn't handle that level, that higher level. We hadn't really achieved it the way the Avos had and Moshe Rabeinu, etc. So instead, we got the Mishkan. We had the Mishkan in the desert, and we know that God was revealed there, it was palpable. And after the Mishkan, we took it a step up. When we got to Eretz Yisrael, eventually we built the Beis HaMikdash. And the Beis HaMikdash, that's where it was at. This is godly revelation. There is no doubt that this is God's home. God is here and can be here, and all the miracles that happen. The Aron somehow fits the room, but there's still space within the room. It's there and not there at the same time. This is God's home, and people came from all over to see it. Then what happened? The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, so now where is God's home? Where can God dwell? Mishachar Beis HaMikdash, once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and LaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'alama Mishkan Machal Neshivto. God had no place to dwell. There was no abode for him. His one is there was no place for it. Ela Arba Amal Shel Halacha, but the 4 cubits of Halacha. So we say now, where does God dwell? Where do we say this is God's home? Within the 4 cubits of halacha. Why specifically 4 cubits of halacha? Despite the fact that his glory fills the entire earth, the uniqueness of this site lies in the revelation of godliness, which occurs there compared to the rest of the world. I think that was about the Beis HaMikdash. The point is that even though God is everywhere, when we talk about God dwelling in a specific place, we're talking about the level of revelation. We understand the Beis HaMikdash was a place of unusual, as compared to the rest of the world, godly revelation. Today, when we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, where does God dwell? Where does he go now? Where's his home? So we say that his home now is in the 4 cubits of halacha. Why specifically halacha? Because halacha is Hashem's will. It's Hashem's wisdom. Through the study of the will and the wisdom of God, we're saying, we brought you down here, now you could hang out here. This is a place where you can be comfortable. This is a place where you could be your real self. We have now revealed you in this moment, in this place of your will and wisdom. That is yourself. So, how does this tie into everything? And then we're going to bring back to the joy factor. How does this tie into everything? A person should have a talk with themselves. And he should say it himself. The capacity of my intelligence and soul's root is too limited to be a chariot and home for God. I'm not at the level of the Avos or Moshe Rabeinu or the prophets or the great kings. We're not there. My thought cannot grasp or apprehend his unity at all with any degree of comprehension in the world. I am so far removed from God. I'm so far removed from his thought. I'm so far removed from this level of connection and submission and giving myself over. Let's be honest about what's what and who's who. I'm too small for it. Not in a sense of because I'm worthless, God forbid, but in a sense of just recognizing that I'm not on that level. Eladzos, what are we supposed to do about this? This being so, however, I can still make him a sanctuary. I can still make him a place where he can dwell. I can still make him a home. So the king could come to the peasant's home and come hang out with me. How? How do we do this? By studying Torah at set times by day and by night, as per my free time. As per my free time is not supposed to be the loophole. As per my free time is the understanding that you gotta go to work, you gotta take care of day-to-day things. Therefore, even though I'd like to learn Torah all day long, because that would be the most appropriate thing to make a home for God, because this is where God is most comfortable, I myself cannot be the chariot, but I can make him a sanctuary, studying Torah and fulfilling his will. That's how we do it. I will allot as much time as possible to doing this. And it says also, by studying Torah at set times by day and by night, even if you could only study one chapter in the morning, one chapter at home, you're still sandwiching the day with Torah study. Because the way you're starting off your day and you're wrapping up your day with what the truth on priority really is. If I'll get a little bit more time in the day, then I'll give more time to Torah study. But if I got to be running around or chasing after kids or whatever it is, maybe I can't give as much time. But my direction and my focus is still on how can I make a home for God, and I know that it's through Torah study, etc. Therefore, even while his time for Torah study is limited to a small part of the day and night, he is regarded as having studied the entire day. Since he would have devoted all this time to Torah study had it been available. By virtue of his good intention, he is in a sense an abode for godliness, not only during the time actually spent in Torah study, but also throughout the day. Because we've kind of set the parameters and we set the boundaries, we say my day starts with Torah study and ends with Torah study, you have now created a sanctuary for God. You have now said, here is a place of godly revelation. And that, of course, should cause a person great joy. That is something, hey, I can't be on this level, but it just takes a little Torah study from me. Well, a lot, if you give a lot, but it takes a little Torah study from me, and now I've made a home for God. That's pretty cool. I can do that. Not only that, now we take it to the next level. First of all, just by being this a person, it caused great joy because you know that you're not playing host to the Shechinah. As we said already from last time, that as the king goes to the peasant's house, I am playing host now to God. What could you possibly want more than that? What could possibly equal being host to God? Well, according to Avram Avinu, which is still his will. Now, not only that, but we take it to the next level, not just Torah study. There's another way to infuse the entire day to bring it to this level. How do we do that? Even during the remainder of the day when he is engaged in business, he will be an abode for God by giving charity out of the proceeds of his labor. When we give tzedakah, we are now elevating the rest of the work we put into the day. Because we couldn't study Torah throughout the day. We want to. We really, really want to, but we can't. So instead we try to sandwich the day with Torah study. But what about the rest of the day? So the rest of the day we're working, we're doing stuff. But now we take that money and we give it to tzedakah. Why is this now considered making an abode and making a home for God throughout all the day? Chesed dura yamina, kindness is the right arm of God, so to speak. Expression that's used. Therefore, human kindness constitutes an abode for the divine attribute of kindness. God is kind, Hashem is kindness. When we will be kind as God is kind, it's the same kind of idea of saying, hey, be at home here. Not only are we studying your will and your wisdom, and not only are we bringing you into this world and revealing you here and say, hey, you know what God said, you know what God said, you know what God said. But not just that, we're emulating you. And through emulating you, we can make you comfortable here. This is a home for you now. Even though one distributes as charity no more than 1/5 of his earnings, yet that fifth elevates it with all the other 4 parts. Even though we only give part of our parnasa to tzedakah, it elevates everything we've done until then. Because all of us goes into having earned that amount. It's a conglomerate. So when you take from it, when you take part of it, it benefits. It's connected to all the rest. The effort I put in throughout the whole day earned the sum total. And now from the sum total, when I give that to tzedakah, now we've elevated all the rest of the day. The part that we couldn't study Torah with, but instead we had to go to business, we had to go work, now it's all been elevated through giving tzedakah. Because tzedakah giving emulates God's actions. Not only that, but mitzvah tzedakah shkula connected kol karbanos. The sages say that tzedakah is equal to all the karbanos. What's the deal with that? The whole thing about the karbanos that we used to offer, the cattle part of the karbanos, the animal part, and that would elevate all the species. You bring a cow or a bull as a karban, it elevated all the bulls, and it elevated all the cows. Or you'd bring a grain offering, like a mincha offering, that elevated all the grain. The same kind of idea. So when we give tzedakah, it elevates all that we put into earning all the money that we gave to tzedakah. There's a whole chain reaction of elevation just from the one part of tzedakah that you gave. So, 2 ways that we have here that's clearly delineated. Of course, all the mitzvahs and everything is included in it. But 2 ways we have here that God has nowhere to dwell anymore because there's no Beis HaMikdash anymore. So where does he dwell now? Either in halacha and Torah study, or the mitzvahs that we do. And tzedakah is considered like the penultimate because we put so much into earning a livelihood. Almost everything we do is connected to it. You got to get clothes for it. You got to eat and whatever. All the stuff that's connected to it, all of it gets elevated when we give tzedakah. even though it's only part. It's all connected. We've actually gone through different kinds of joy that we can focus on, especially if we're saddened over some sort of spiritual shortcoming. Remember, this is what started it all. That we're talking about things that cause sadness to us, especially debilitating sadness. Chapter 26, talking about physical stuff in the world that could cause us to be sad. But then we shifted from there. We spoke about other kind of stuff that could make us sad. A sense of our own unworthiness. A sense of our own, why am I trying so hard and it's not panning out for me? As far as, why do I still have certain kinds of challenges? That's where we began from. And then from there, we got into the whole thing about apathy. I'm not feeling it. The whole thing with shiftless. You have to make yourself feel inferior. And that way you realize you're not putting in enough effort. And then we got to obvious soul, of course, to recognize the truth of that we all have the same Father in heaven, etc. Last chapter, okay, the peasants inviting the king in. We have different kinds of joys that we focused on. These are ways that when we're upset about our own self, and why am I not measuring up, or it feels like I'm always just going uphill, or plug in your insecurity, your cause for sadness, plug it in here. We are now given a bunch of ways to find joy within all of this. For example, the joy of the soul being released from exile within the body and animal soul. As in, when the soul came down into the world, it's like a prince going into captivity. There's no greater joy as when you are freed from captivity. Captivity means I can't be my real self. The soul is stuck in a body, and the soul's like, let's go to shul, and the body's, or let's go clubbing, bye! The soul has no control over the body in that regard. That's what we're aiming for, of course. The nefesh should have control over the nefesh habahamas and the body, but it doesn't, so it feels like it's a captive. I can't express my real self. However, when we dedicate ourselves, the princess is now married to the peasant, and he's trying to give her potatoes to make her happy, but I know what really makes the princess happy, and that is Torah mitzvahs. It's not just like, oh look, I did a mitzvah, hooray, and then we can all sing the mitzvah song and have a mitzvah note. The moment of doing the mitzvah, or Torah study, etc., that is a moment when the soul is being freed from captivity. Yay, I get to express my real self now. It's not just the soul's real self, it is actually your real self also. Because who are you really? You're not your body. The true self of yourself is your soul. You are now being freed from this sense of captivity of the true expression of yourself. The true expression of yourself is the desire to unite to God. Which goes all the way back to chapters 18 and 19, when we talk about the Ava Mitzvahs, the hidden love that we have within us. It's a flame that's burning upward. It wants to unite with its source. Time of Torah mitzvahs, whether or not you're feeling it, or whether or not you've refined yourself enough, or wherever you're at, we can still take joy in the fact of knowing I have let my soul express its real self. I have let me, the real me, express my real self. The other one we have is the joy of being close to God through awareness of His unity. Tzaddik b'amunas hayichya, that a tzaddik lives by his faith, in knowing that everything that happens in this world is because God said so. My faith is in the absolute knowingness of everything in this world is Godness. That should cause us joy. You don't have to stress yourself out. Things are not spiraling out of control. Everything is according to God's will. And that is my starting point. This faith that I have in the absoluteness of God, that He is everything and everywhere. He's hidden, but He's not gone. He's hidden, but He's not absent. I just don't see Him. But if I start with my faith, I can actually reveal Him in the world. I can actually find Him in the world. Where I look, I can actually see Him. It's a good exercise to try. If you start your day and saying, I'm going to find God in everything, you will. It's a perspective shift. Once you've shifted your perspective, you can't not live according to what the shift is now. Once you redefine reality, you can't see reality any other way. This is a joy that we have in being close to God through the awareness of His unity, of knowing that we're all part of the Godness still, and that the whole world is the Godness still. And then we also have a joy that's caused through God's joy in crushing the Sitra Achra. That when we say no, when we hold back and we resist, there's so much nachas ruach that God gets just by the fact that it's so tempting for us and it's so hard for us. We said no. Sure, we're not on the level of a tzaddik. He has a total different experience of reality in a way because he can see more of the truth of things and he's more spiritually sensitive. But at the same time, the tzaddik then, he doesn't have the same level of temptation that a regular person will have. When a regular person, when it's so much harder for them to say no and they do say no, that causes God immense joy of, look, they did it. He did it. He said no. He didn't give in. So these are three things that we've gone through. And now this time also. We're going to add number 4 would be the joy that we have in knowing that we can make a home for God. Till the base of Mikdash is rebuilt again, Makar Mamish, Amen. We can make a home for Him just through Torah study, through giving tzedakah, through doing what we're supposed to be doing kind of thing. However, the chapter is going to end up with a caveat. Now that we've told you all the ways to find joy, and we're going to make sure that you're not going to be depressed in your service, you're not going to have debilitating sadness that's going to hold you back. We're going to make sure that sadness is not a debilitating factor to you. We're going to make sure that sadness is not going to be a ball and chain for you. However, don't let that hold you back from still improving yourself because you know that you're not the best that you should be. What we're doing now is we're saying, look, joy does not conflict with the bitter remorse and sadness that one experiences over one's spiritual failing. You're still allowed to be upset at the fact that you haven't yet reached the level. You're still allowed to be upset at the fact that I'm probably not the best that could be. The point, though, is that because we have all these reasons for joy, we're not going to be dragged down by it. We're not going to allow this to slow our train of awesome. But we can't deny it that we have not yet reached the level that we possibly could. Weeping is lodged in one side of my heart and joy is lodged in the other side of the heart. It talks about how, I think it was in the Zohar, that one of the great sages, that he heard a deep insight about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So on the one side, it's much sorry, he's hearing about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But at the same time, it's a lot of joy, because it's sort of lofty interpretation. What's the point of the story is that two things can be true at once. Two feelings can coexist. We can have great joy knowing, okay, each time I do what I'm supposed to be doing, this is fulfilling the purpose of creation, this is asserting my belief in God, I'm showing where it's at. At the same time, I'm still not fully comfortable with, I haven't fully come to terms with the fact that I'm not exactly the person I should be just yet. The point, though, is that it's not going to be debilitating to us anymore. Especially because now we have the joy to lift us up and to have the joy that's going to allow us to actually, as we're working on ourselves and as we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we can actually have joy in that actual surface. The point is not just to have this conceptual idea of knowing that this makes God happy, but knowing that this makes God happy, now I am happy in what I'm doing. The fact that I got to sandwich my day with Torah study, I have joy in the Torah study. Or I have joy in the moment of releasing from captivity, or joy in crushing the sitrach, or whatever it's going to be, because I know that this causes God joy. So we have to bring joy in, knowing He gets joy from it, we bring it in, and I can approach things joyously, but at the same time, still, by the way, I'm not totally okay with the fact that I am not totally at the level I should be at.